Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Social Engineering Fraud Claim webinar. I'm your host, Sherry Branson. I'm now joined by Kevin Davis of Kevin Davis Insurance, and Kevin joins me from Los Angeles. Good morning, Kevin.
Good morning, Sherry. How you doing?
Doing well, thank you. Doing well. Kevin will be on the screen in a second.
No one can see you. Okay, nobody can see me, huh? Okay. Oh.
Okay, but we can hear you fine, though, Kevin. We can hear you loud and clear.
That's interesting. Okay, anyway, so you won't see me today. Yes, these live broadcasts. Anyway, so how's Sherry doing?
I'm doing well, Kevin, but we're both at work. I guess we're not billionaires. We didn't win the Mega Millions. So everybody joining us today, we're not the lucky billionaire, but that's okay.
Yeah, I guess we're not. So, but you know what? I think you and I would be here anyway. Wouldn't we, Sherry?
That's true. Yeah, we would do our webinar anyway because we're very dedicated and we want to make sure that, if we say we're going to do something, we're going to do it. And you're right. We would be doing it anyway, even if we won the Mega Millions. So congratulations to the lucky winner out there. But we're all at work today. So that's great. Yeah. And Kevin, today we're covering social engineering fraud claims. Oh, there you are, Kevin. Hey. Can you see me okay?
Okay.
Yeah, I can see you fine. I can see you fine.
All right. Success.
Yay.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you and see you fine.
All right, good. Okay. So what are we talking about today?
Well, today, Kevin, this month is a very special month. We're going to talk about social engineering fraud and why community associations need that type of coverage and exactly, explain what it is, explain what the coverage is and what the crime is actually. And this is a special month to do it in.
Yeah, because October is National Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Last year we did the same kind of program on cyber losses, cyber insurance, because of National Cybersecurity Month. This year we're going to do something a little bit different. Take one part of cyber and talk about social engineering fraud claims. Because right now it's something that's really, we all are starting to understand it. We all starting to see claims in that area. And for condominiums, I think it's going to be a really major problem in the future.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I did want to mention that if I record all of our webinars and I put the recordings on our website, which is kdisonline.com, you can listen to today's webinar and all of our past webinars. And I did want to give you my email address, which is Branson, BRANSON, at KDINS.com. If you have any questions about what we go over, please send me an email and Kevin and I will answer them at the end of the webinar, or you can type them in the chat box, which is on the screen. And then one other thing I wanted to mention, I can send you the PowerPoint presentation, and I also have a flyer, a marketing flyer of crime claims, which also includes social engineering claims. So feel free to send me an email and I'm happy to send you this information. So Kevin, what is our goal today? What are we trying to accomplish?
Sure. What we're going to do is a couple of things. We're going to recognize what social engineering fraud claims look like, get a few tips on how to avoid them, and to discuss the insurance coverages available today. You see, right now we're all aware of cyber criminals. These people out there who want to gain access to a computer system and compromise the data. These are those computer hackers. However, something new out there. There's a new type of person out there who use these far more dangerous tools. They can gain access to protected information. They are the social engineers. These are hackers who exploit the one weakness that is found in each and every organization. And that's us. Our human weaknesses, our ability to be tricked into giving out information that we don't want to give out.
The human weakness. That's true, Kevin. I mean, we're not computers, so we make mistakes. Now, can you define social engineering fraud for everybody?
Sure. When we talk about social engineering fraud, it's defined as an intentional misleading of individuals into divulging confidential personal information that may be used for fraudulent purposes.
Okay. These social engineers, they try to get employees to reveal sensitive information like their personal information, and they do it through either a phone call or an email, right, Kevin?
That's right. Social engineering is just the easier way to get that information than by hacking. Simple as that.
That makes sense. And this is not something new. I mean, this has been around for a few years now. You know, they're really, a social engineer is nothing more than a con man. They try to trick you, and they use technology to get people to give away their passwords or other personal information. But basically, their ultimate goal is to gain access to your computer.
And this is give you an example because we see this here a lot of times. We all get these legitimate looking emails from our bank, right? Pretending to be somebody from our bank, right? And if you follow up, they'll give you a call and say, listen, your credit card right now is being used to get purchased items overseas. Now, if you can confirm your checking account number or your credit card number or some other account number and your password right away, he can get that card shut down and you won't be liable for any of the losses. That's social engineering fraud claim.
Okay. And, you know, they can basically trick you by gaining your trust. They trick you into believing that an email from a friend or a relative even, it could come from your bank, like you said, or it could pretend to be a friend or a fellow board member or relative. And then they want you to click on that link. And once you click on the link, you've downloaded malware onto your computer, and then they can get into your system.
Yes. And it's all based on one thing, tricking you into that information as opposed to trying to get you to do anything else. It's tricking you. It's kind of unit. Yeah.
You think it's legitimate all along. And so let's talk a little bit more about how these social engineering claims occur, Kevin.
All right. So when we talk about social engineering claims, phishing attacks are the most dominant way of obtaining information or access into any computer network.
Okay, and phishing is, as you can see on the screen, everybody, it's phishing. It's not phishing like regular phishing. And basically what you're saying is my system gets compromised when I click on that link, I'm downloading the attachment, and then they have access to everything, my social media accounts, my banking information, my personal information, etc. So they just want access to my computer. So they're sending phishing attacks out every single day.
Exactly. And right now, one of the most current effective methods out here, and it happens to me all the time, is someone in an accounting department. In our accounting department, they receive these fraudulent emails from someone pretending to be me or any company president or CEO and tells them the company's involved in some major transaction and needs money immediately. That person then, the accountant or the person inside, ends up sending the money, later finding out that the email was fraudulent.
Absolutely. And now, you know, everybody who's joining us today is in the community association industry. So when we talk about social engineering fraud involving community associations, the criminal is basically trying to get access to their reserve account or their operating account, and they're using the association's board members to send emails to the board members or to the property manager, etc. And they want access to that management company computer system or the board members or the association's computer system. So because these board members and also the property managers and or both are handling large sums of money, it makes them prime targets for social engineering fraud.
Yeah, and again, we've had 2 recent claims, and it shows you this to show you how easy social engineering really is. We have a board member who receives an email from someone pretending to be the association insurance agent, which requests a wire transfer for the renewal premium. The board member wires $75,000 in renewal premium to the account of the impersonator. So as simple as that, $75,000 is gone.
Yeah, that's a big loss. That's a very, very big loss, $75,000.
In another situation involving a property manager, the property manager received an email from someone pretending to be a vendor because, again, a lot of the vendor payments come through the management company office, okay? So he gets an email from a fictitious person, okay? The email informed the property manager that the vendor changed banks. So the property manager wires the next payment to the new bank, the impersonator's bank. And guess what? Now you're talking about an $8,700 loss.
Another big one. Yeah, we're not talking about hundreds of dollars. We're talking about thousands of dollars, Kevin.
Yeah, and so what are we talking about here? What it means that hackers and cyber criminals have access to large amount of money in these condo associations by people overseeing who lack the knowledge to protect the association. Again, this makes them prime targets for social engineering claims.
Absolutely. And the other thing about community associations that comes to mind is the board members are volunteers, and they don't have specific training or management background to run a company. And an association basically is a company, so they might not have the training or experiencing managing the condo association. So and the IT protection as well, where they're easy victims.
Yeah, and one of the worst part, they have very little oversight of people handling the money.
hmm hmm Yeah, there's really no requirements to become a board member or even the treasurer. All you have to do is show up and raise your hand and say, I'd like to be the treasurer, and you're made the treasurer. And then you're handling thousands of dollars.
And what
So,
they do with that money is they turn over handling all the funds, and sometimes even in the reserve account, which should never happen, to these independent property management companies, again, with very little oversight.
Yeah, and a lot of board members, they look at serving on the board as kind of a hobby. They look at it as fun. They look at it as a social hour, a time to see their friends and get to know their neighbors, etc. But they don't really look at it as a major corporation. And if an association has a lot of units, they're really managing a very large corporation, right, Kevin?
And that's the whole point. I mean, just think about it. If you are handling 100 units and each unit is worth $100,000, it's a $10 million corporation that these individuals are responsible for. And again, they have very little oversight, very little bit of knowledge and experience how to actually run an association. So again, it makes them really prime targets for social engineering losses.
They don't realize the amount of responsibility that they have on their shoulders. And now, Kevin, how can community associations, or how can people in general protect against social engineering losses? What can people do?
Okay, I would say number one, it starts with education. Teaching people what to look for when getting an email or receiving a phone call from someone asking for information. Here are just a couple of things right here off the bat, okay? When we open an email, watch out if you don't trust the source there. Don't give strangers the benefit of the doubt. We always like to give people the benefit of the doubt. Don't do it. Make sure you lock your laptop and make sure it's password protected. Purchase any antivirus software. Really important. And make sure you understand your privacy policy of the company. Their job is to protect your software, to protect your computer system. If you don't understand it, then you are likely to be hit by one of these social engineering kind of fraud claims.
And even if the email does look legitimate, if it's from a person you may know or your bank, it's always a good idea to look at the from address, make sure it matches your previous emails from that person or from the bank, etc. And then hover over the links and verify the URL. And then never download an attachment, never download one unless you absolutely are sure that the email came from a legitimate source. That's going to really reduce your chances of having a successful attack. And I always say, when in doubt, if something looks a little suspicious, and especially if it involves money or request for money or an account number, I always make a phone call, Kevin. I just call that person up and say, did you send me this email?
Yes, exactly. And the problem is this: no matter how hard you try, social engineering fraud is still the easiest way to gain access to the data. The success rate on social engineering claims are improving as they take advantage of our desire to help out or to trust. And as the claims continue, more people are looking to insurance to protect them against these type of claims. Now, when we talk about insurance, we're talking about the cyber policy or the crime policy. They look into those two policies to make sure that coverage is provided. And on the crime policy, we're talking about wire transfer fraud and computer crime coverages.
Okay. And now we're going to get into talking about the coverage itself. And just to let everybody know, the social engineering fraud is an endorsement that attaches to the crime policy. So let's talk about social engineering fraud coverage a little bit, Kevin. Kevin? Oh, I think Kevin froze up there. I don't think he can hear me. Kevin? Okay, so I'll start out this section and then he'll join us in a second. Basically, social engineering fraud coverage, it's an endorsement that attaches to the crime policy, the existing crime policy. And it basically expands the crime policy to protect employees from the transferring, paying, or delivering of funds to people who pretend to be vendors, employees, and clients. For there to be a social engineering fraud claim to occur, four things must happen. Number
Joyce is in
one,
her office, but she's not there.
Yeah.
employee must be misled by a person masquerading as an authorized individual like a vendor, client, or employee.
The consumer.
Funds have to be missing by transferring, paying, or delivering the funds to a fictitious account. And an employee must be convinced that a request to send money is from a legitimate source and the real person never receives the money. So a perfect example of this is if you were a board member and you were misled into transferring reserve funds to a roofer because you were convinced that it was from Bob, your roofing contractor. Later, after paying this, you realized that the email was someone pretending to be Bob, and then a fraudulent transaction was made.
Hey Sherry.
Yes.
Hello. Okay. I'm back.
Okay, great. I just covered the social engineering fraud coverage, Kevin. So I just talked about Bob, the roofing contractor. I just finished that example. So I'll tell my example, my claim example that I heard in Florida while you're getting set up again. Basically, when I was in Florida at a trade show a few years ago, I had a board member come up to me and tell me that the treasurer at their condo association had received an email requesting from another board member saying they were going to purchase a painting for the lobby of their condo association and could they transfer $10,000 into their account. Well, the treasurer thought that was kind of suspicious. That was a large amount of money for a painting. So they called the board member and said, did you send me this email? And the board member said, no, I didn't send you the email. So that was a social engineer pretending to be a board member looking to get a $10,000 payment from that association. So that's my example that I heard at a trade show. Welcome back, Kevin. Hey.
I had to run to another room. The connection, the Wi-Fi connection died on me over there. So I'm in another room. So I have another connection. So let me do a quick review on what social engineering fraud really is, and then we'll continue from there. So when we talk about social engineering fraud coverage, we talk about three things. We talk about expanding the crime insurance policy to protect employees from transferring, paying, or delivering funds to people who pretend to be vendors, employees, and clients. So that's kind of what I missed in last sense. So that's it in a nutshell, and that's what we're talking about. And you gave a perfect example of Bob the roofer, and that's the kind of things that we're going to see more and more of and happening every single day. So, all right. Great. So pick up from there.
Okay, now we're going to talk about crime coverage, social engineering crime coverage examined a little closer. And now, Kevin, are there different types of social engineering coverage available, or is it just one type?
Okay, there is no such thing as a standard endorsement for social engineering. They are constantly changing because of the complicated nature of this unique exposure. Some are very restrictive and provide minimum amount of coverage and may have what's called a callback provision in there. So you have to be careful that there's no callback provision in your social engineering coverage.
Okay, so can you explain what is a callback provision?
Sure. Let's go back to the Bob the roofer. Okay, if you were a board member, all right, and you get a fictitious email or a fraudulent email from somebody pretending to be Bob the roofer, and you send the money, a callback provision says you have to pick up the phone first and call Bob the roofer and said, did you change your bank? Okay,
so that's a very important thing to be aware, to check the policy to see if that provision is included, because that could be a big problem. A lot of people won't make that phone call.
Exactly. They assume because of the legitimacy of the email itself and the trust they have in Bob the roofer, so that the next thing you know, they send the money out without verification. And again, some policies do have callback provisions in there so that if you don't call back, there is no coverage.
Okay.
All right. So I guess the bottom line is that what you want to do is make sure you have a social engineering endorsement that provides the protections you need. You have to actually look at it and review it. Now, the social engineering endorsement we have do not have a callback provision in it, and is designed for community association because so it extends to the property manager.
Okay, that's very important. Yes. A definition of employee under our crime policy includes the property manager, right, Kevin?
Exactly, and that's the important part of it. So you may have social engineering coverage, but you got to make sure that the property manager is also an insured under the policy. That's critical.
Absolutely, because quite often they're handling the money. They're handling the reserve account. So, and writing the checks and paying the vendors, etc. And now, Kevin, I'm sure a lot of people are wondering, why isn't this social engineering fraud coverage covered under the cyber policy?
Okay. Now, this is good because, again, most people will look to anything to get these situations covered. When you talk about cyber, you're talking about one thing, and that is specific costs dealing with an actual data breach.
Can you define data breach?
Sure. When we talk about data breach, we're talking about the unauthorized acquiring of personal information.
Okay.
And we talk about personal information, we're talking about the individual's first name, last name, plus social security number, driver's license, account number. They have to be combined. The first name, last name, plus one of those other things.
Okay.
Okay. Now, the crime policy itself is about the loss of funds. Cyber deals with personal identifiable information and specific costs related to them, which are the fines and penalties associated with the breach, covers to hire a public relations firm, to rebuild the company, defense costs if they're sued. These are all dealing with cyber. Now, there is some crime coverage in some cyber policy, but right now, most cyber policies do not cover social engineering.
Okay, that makes sense. And now, Kevin, why wouldn't a standard crime policy cover this social engineering fraud without an endorsement? Because right now it has to be added by endorsement. Why wouldn't just the standard crime policy cover it?
Okay, there's an exclusion in the crime policy. It's called exclusion R, and that tells you why it does not apply. So exclusion R. Exclusion R basically says that coverage will not apply to loss from the giving or surrendering of money, security, or other property in exchange or purchase, whether or not fraudulent.
Okay.
Right?
It's because
now, let me give you an example. So once again, our Bob, Bob the roofer there, right? We gave him money. We believe Bob the roofer was that. So the exclusion applies because we willingly gave that money to the fake Bob the roofer, basically, but was willingly surrendered the money.
Okay. So because the money is willingly given over, because you're tricked into giving the money willingly over, then that would have been excluded it is excluded under a typical crime policy. Okay. Yeah. So that's why it's so critical to have the social engineering fraud endorsement.
Yes. And again, the willingness is even if it's fraudulent or not, whether or not fraudulent, that's the key word, whether or not fraudulent. So they assumed that Bob the roofer was the real Bob the roofer, but it was fraudulent. And that's the key thing. You willingly gave money away, even though it was fraudulent.
Absolutely. And now, Kevin, I'm sure a lot of people are wondering, if the management company is handling all of the reserve account and the operating account, and they're handling all the money for the association, why does the association need social engineering fraud coverage when the management company is responsible for collecting all of the money and the data?
Okay. For some reason, community association board members believe that they turn over the data and assessment collection to the management company, they're no longer responsible. Now, this may or may not be true. Don't forget, it's the data in the funds that they're responsible for. The community association needs a way to protect the funds in their care, custody, control of the management company. So the key thing is that they're responsible, even though it's in the care, custody, control of the management company. So let me say this to you, Sheriff. If the let's say you serve on the board of your homeowner association. If you heard the management company's system's been compromised and funds are missing, are you concerned?
Sure, of course. Yeah, my first thought would be, how are we going to replace this money? There's money missing. What do we have coverage? Do we have insurance coverage? What's our limit on our insurance policy if we do have the coverage? And basically, I just feel that we would ultimately be held responsible for that missing money, and we might have to have a special assessment put in place, you know, to replace that money. So a lot of questions would come to mind, Kevin. And, you know, it just make me wonder, you know, make sure that we have that endorsement and have some coverage in place.
And that's the easiest way. The easiest way, again, is for the association to have their own crime policy, have all the extensions they can get, and to make sure the management company is covered, because if there's a claim under the management company's policy, will you ever get your money back?
Absolutely. Is that money gone forever, or do you have coverage? Yeah, I'd be wondering about that, and wondering about, you know, how are we going to replace this money? And now, Kevin, with crime policy, you know, in a typical crime policy, there's wire transfer fund coverage and computer fraud coverage. Is social engineering coverage in there somewhere, or is it not part of that?
You know what? And this is really important, because most people believe that when you have a social engineering loss because of what the definition of these two coverages are, it should be covered on air. So we'll take a time and talk about these two coverages. Number one, when you talk about computer fraud coverages, we talk about computer fraud is the use of any computer to fraudulently cause a transfer of money, securities, or other property from inside the insured's premises to a person or place outside the premises without the insured's knowledge or consent. Okay, that means a person may come into your office masquerading as an IT professional, exterminator, a janitor, a mail person. While there, they fraudulently gain access to a computer system, maybe because there's a password taped to your computer screen or on your desk. Once that password is there, they tapped into your system. Then you manage to change the routing number or the bank account number from the vendor to their own personal account, and then transfer funds directly to the account. So it happens on insurance premises without the insured's knowledge or consent. That's social engineering claims. Okay, the key word here is that it is an authorized, because it's an unauthorized transfer, stops the coverage on the computer, provides coverage for computer fraud. On social engineering, it is an authorized transfer, meaning that the claim actually occurred with the insured organization's knowledge or consent. That makes a difference.
Absolutely. So it's one is done with consent of the employee because they're being tricked into sending the money, and the other one is stolen basically without the company's knowledge or the employee's knowledge.
Exactly. It's on the premises, even though it was on the premises that the person lost the money, that person but was tricked into it. So keywords there, the insured's knowledge or consent.
Absolutely. And can you talk a little bit about wire transfer fraud coverage, Kevin? What exactly is that?
Under wire transfer fraud coverage, wire transfer, that was someone fraudulently instructs a bank or financial institution to transfer, pay, or delivering money from an account maintained by the insured, again, without the insured's knowledge or consent. All right, let me give you an example. A board president opens up an email infected with malware. Once inside the president's computer system, okay, once inside there, the cyber criminal obtains the user's ID and password to the bank account. Immediately, a fraudulent electronic wire transfer is sent out, let's say for $100,000 to be wired from the association's bank account to an unknown bank. That's funds transfer fraud. Now, under social engineering, again, it is the unauthorized transfer of funds with the knowledge and consent of the insured. That's the difference. One's unauthorized wire transfer fraud, the unauthorized transfer of funds without the knowledge and consent. Computer crime, unauthorized transfer without the knowledge and consent. On social engineering, it is an authorized transfer of money with the insured knowledge consent, but fraudulently based.
Right. Okay. So that's the difference. Okay. And those coverages are under the crime policy, under a crime policy, but the social engineering fraud is an endorsement on the policy. Great.
That's it.
Great. Yes. Great. Thank you, Kevin. And now let's talk. Let's talk about in general. You know, what people should know in general about social engineering fraud. Give everybody kind of an overview.
Sure. Number one, that the claims are happening. People are understanding more and more and more about social engineering, how much of a problem it's becoming, and it's becoming a big problem. You need to understand where the coverage is. is there coverage out there? Because only a handful of carriers right now providing this very valuable coverage. Not many at all are providing it for community associations, for condos, homeowner associations. So what you got to do is make sure that you do have this social engineering coverage under your crime policy. Make sure it's endorsed, number one. Make sure coverage extends to the management company. Make sure there's no callback provision or verification that's needed for the coverage. Make sure the coverage extends not only to employees, but vendors, clients, and executives. And make sure you have enough limit to cover a potential loss. So I guess those are the most important things that you got that are takeaways from the social engineering. Again, social engineering is something that is impacting community associations more and more. And most of the community associations out there do not have the insurance to provide the coverage.
Absolutely. Great. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you so much for a great webinar. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. I did want to give my email address out one more time. It's sbranson@kdins.com. And if you'd like a copy of the PowerPoint and also a flyer, I have a crimes claim flyer, which includes the social engineering claims that we talked about earlier. I'm happy to email you the flyer, and I record all of these webinars and put them on our website, which is kdisonline.com. Thank you for joining us. Have a great afternoon.
Thanks a lot, everybody.
Take care.